Hi guys, it is Kate coming to you from my car because I'm here with a special guest.
Hi everybody, it's me, the book nester.
And we want to talk to you today about rereading. So I have made Rebecca be very brave and just film a video on the fly. We have just gotten together today to look at some books and chat, and it's been a really nice day to catch up. And I thought talking about rereading would be interesting, and it seems to be a sort of popular topic on BookTube, so I thought it would be cool if we gave our thoughts. And so I'll just go first, and I personally am a big fan of rereading. I reread maybe like 5 books every year, and I just love revisiting some of my favorite places and books, and I love those like characters that I've gotten to know. I love seeing them again, and I like, if there's beautiful writing, I love getting to go back to like favorite quotes and things that I really enjoyed there. So I just am a big fan of rereading, and that's a reason I love book tags, is because then I'm able to think about some of my favorite books that I did read and think about what I would like to reread in the future, and you know, just talking about them. Oh, I missed that book. Like, I'd like to go back to that book. And it's just really special, I think. A book that also maybe you associate with a certain memory or a special time. And it's able to help you revisit those memories and be like grateful for that certain stage you were at in your life when you were rereading. And then I also think, in addition to that, the first time that you're reading it, you're really getting used to the author's writing style and the characters, kind of if they're a very different kind of personality or they have really different quirks to them, things like that. Or if it's a fantasy, it's a really different kind of world. You're getting used to that and seeing all of these new layers to it. But when you reread it, you kind of are already established in that, so then you can focus in on things that you wouldn't notice the first time going through it, and can really enjoy different aspects of the story. And then each time that you reread it, you're going to notice different things. So when I reread Jane Austen's Emma and Pride and Prejudice last year, I noticed things about the story that I hadn't noticed before, and different comparisons between different characters, and it's just really neat to find things that you wouldn't find, little gems that you wouldn't notice the first time. And I think Jane Austen is especially conducive to rereading and finding things that you wouldn't notice. So then I have picked my like top 3 books that we were just kind of making our list of books that we'd like to reread.
Checking it twice.
And yeah, just thinking about, just off the cuff, kind of, these are the first 3 that came to mind that I'd like to reread and why I'd like to reread them. So the first is Anne of Green Gables. And I actually didn't read Anne of Green Gables until I was 22. I had grown up watching the miniseries and knowing about the story, but I hadn't actually read the book. And so it was such a cool experience at 22 to read it. And it was a book that I ended up liking more than the movie, which I feel if you've grown up with the movie, then you're not always going to like the book more. And so I was just a really pleasant surprise. So I think I was just really enamored with it the first time I read it. Not only for the winsome character of Anne and all the other characters in that world, but also for the writing, that the descriptions of nature are just so lush and beautiful and vivid. So that's something that I'd like to go back to, just to kind of hang out with Anne again. And, you know, I have read some of the other ones in the series and I like them, but I don't like them nearly as much. And the second one on my list is Wives and Daughters. And this one is a combination of reasons. The first that I've mentioned several times on my channel is that I read it when my son was a newborn, and I just have lots of nostalgic memories about being like a new mom and going through that book over the course of several months because I was a new mom and busy. But it was really fun to go through the audiobook and just really take my time with that book. And just Molly Gibson remains my favorite character in all of literature, and it's, you know, one of my very favorite books. I talk about it all the time, but I've only read it once. So I would like to read it a second time and get to notice more of the beautiful writing. Since I did only the audiobook, I didn't underline any quotes. So I would love to, you know, take note of the really special sentences and phrases and descriptions in it. And in addition to that, I'd like to get to know other characters in the story better. Maybe I'll notice more characters when I'm reading. And I was so like impressed by Molly the first time that I read it. So it would be neat to read it again and notice different characters. And then the third is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy seems very conducive for rewriting because the world that Tolkien has built in it is just the tip of the iceberg with everything he had thought of for this world, for all the additional books that have been released. You know, he had so much detail and thought put into this world. And I think that the writing style, though, is very dense. So it definitely was hard for me to get through it. It definitely felt like a task. I knew I wanted to get through it. So, you know, I kind of pushed through. But I was, some of the time while I was reading it, I just kept thinking about how dense the writing was. So maybe not always enjoying it. I'd like to kind of chill out with a reread of it and take note of beautiful quotes and get to know other characters better. And in addition to that, get a better idea of the plot, because I think things and events just got sort of jumbled around in my head when I was reading it the first time. So I think those are my 3 books that they first came to mind for rereads. And now over to you, Rebecca. And you said you haven't maybe necessarily had the same experience with rereading, and also that you have a philosophy on rereading that you'd like to share.
The great philosophy of the book nester. Actually, I have not reread anything. I've had great intentions to read, and I've always had a desire, and if I purchase a book, the idea is I will reread it, and then I've done none. I've done no rereading.
Wow.
I think it's because I'm always finding other books that I want to read, and I know those books are just waiting for me. But part of it is this great philosophy. Okay, you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Professor Booknester is in the house. Actually, I think scared. Part of the joy of reading a book is that discovery, that first time you read it. And I'm concerned that in most cases, in the 3 that I'm thinking about, for me, they were a little bit unusual. They were a different type of book, or they were written differently, and I enjoyed that experience of kind of discovering them. I won't have that on a reread. And I don't know how much that plays into the overall memory of enjoyment of that book. So, like the first book, which I talk about all the time, and sorry, I pull it out all the time. I was laughing. I said, she's got like 800 to choose from. I have like 20 books to choose from. I wish it was 20 that I could remember. Anyways, but The Alienist by Caleb Carr is definitely one that I want to reread, because there is a memory of really, I tout this as my #1 book.
I didn't know that.
I do, and it's the one that I compare almost all my historical fiction to. It's if anything looks like that book, I pick it up and start looking at it. But part of it is because it was one of the first historical fiction that the characters in it interact with a historical real figures. And there was things that I didn't know about Theodore Roosevelt that I learned about, like before he became president, before he became kind of the Teddy Roosevelt that we know, when he was a police commissioner in New York. And I didn't know that, and I didn't putting that all together. So I know that most people have read it, they love it, and they've reread it. So, but I think it's that finding it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also that change of a memory. So, you know what? I actually just remembered. I have reread one book. I just remembered it. It's Jane Eyre.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to it on audiobook, and I love the person who did it. But Jane Eyre, I used to tout before I found The Alienist as my favorite book. I read it in high school, probably when I was about 15. But then when I re-listened to it, I found a lot of issues. I still love the overall ambiance and stuff, but even the character Jane gave me some issues, and it's changed my view on the book. So I guess I've had that one experience, but that was very recently.
You become kind of disillusioned with it.
And I'm at a different point in my life. When I read it, I was a 15-year-old, and Jane's about that age as well, and what she was experiencing meant something totally different than it does even now. So I think that was the other part. So my second book that I would like to reread is actually The Once and Future King by T.H. White.
Oh, yes. I have not read that, but I want to.
Well, I read it in high school, and I remember thinking, oh, I love it. And, okay, it's because I also really liked Excalibur and the Sword and the Stone Disney version.
Yes.
When he turns into a squirrel and he turns into a fish and the whole singing. Yeah, love that.
Yes.
Yeah. And there is those scenes. They're actually written in this book, and you're like, wow. So I'm thinking, is that why I love the book? But I know it's really a big one, but I would like to read it again because I think the overall story, and it is a classic, and so that is one that I'd like to reread as an adult. And I think I will like it for even more than just the fact that he gets to be changed into fun animals and do some really crazy things.
Yes.
I think there's more to the story than that. And then my third one is one that I read just this past year. It was probably one of my top reads for last year, and that's the Guernsey Literary and here comes my southern accent, and Potato Peel Pie Society, because I can't say it without an accent. And again, this is a first book I've ever read that was in letters. It's a epistolary form.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Professor brought out the big word. But it was in letters. And I have never, knowingly, have I read a book that was, and I did not know this book was done like that. And I found it incredibly charming. But again, is it that first time reading that style? And it's done very well. It's got gorgeous writing.
That's a must.
And the letters really, there's so many characters in the book, but because everybody, when they write letters, how you write is about your character. And that actually came out in this book so much. And I've always been a big fan. I love getting letters, and I love writing letters. And I reread my great grandmother. She had letters that she sent to my grandmother. I knew her for all of 3 months, and then because we went to visit her for her summer and stuff. But I really feel like I know her through the letters. And this book was written really, really well. And I feel like I know those characters. It takes a little bit following. And it's a charming story. It's World War II again, but it's about a part of history I knew nothing about, which is that Guernsey was actually occupied by the Germans. I did not know that. And both you get the aftermath and you get the during, because they're of them talking. And there was a lot of humor, and I actually cried in this book too. There's a moment where one of the characters, something happens, and you're just like, so
you're making me want to really read it.
It's an easy read. I mean, I devoured it, and I don't read particularly quickly, but because of how this is, you want to know and follow this story along. So and so that's one that I bought. It's sitting on my shelf, and it's ready, because I can almost see that one being a yearly read. Kind of that comfort read that you talk about, that you want to go to. I know where the story's going to go. I just want to revisit these characters.
Yes.
So I definitely agree with that.
Okay. You hope that one day that could happen.
Well, World War II? No. But no.
I mean having a comfort read.
Yeah, and I do. I really think that this one would probably tie into that as well. And since then, I've read a lot more that talk about more of the English home side, and been very interested in that. And between the Jam Busters, and which is actually Home Fires, I think is what it's called now.
Yeah.
I've listened to that, and then the Summer Before the War is another great one. So it kind of spurred me on even to read more. But I'm hoping definitely to reread that. But it's funny because I don't really have it set that I'm going to reread, and I need to.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I think that was pretty much everything we had to say about rereading. Please leave
Thoughts in a car.
Yes, thoughts in a car. Oh, all right. Thoughts in a car.
Thoughts
That's
in a
the
car.
name. So leave your thoughts below. We would love to discuss with you in the comments, and I will, of course, link Rebecca's awesome channel down below. And I will see you guys, and hopefully Rebecca will see you guys on her channel for another video soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.